Hi everyone, it's day 33 of the Vendée Globe. Joining me today is Dan Redding. As Head of Sustainability for World Sailing, Dan manages the ambitious sustainability programme for sailing's international governing body. Prior to this, Dan spent 9 years with the RWA working on the Green Blue programme. So let's bring him in. Welcome, Dan. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Tell me a little bit about your role at World Sailing.
Yeah, so Head of Sustainability, as you mentioned, been there for about 3 years now. So delivering on our sustainability strategy and all the various targets that entails. So nurturing some of our members and class associations to develop a kind of a comprehensive sustainability work across the sport.
Okay. Now, I was looking at the sort of recent publication that you produced on the sustainability agenda for 2030. A lot of targets in there, a lot of goals. What would you say are the main challenges at the moment that you're facing?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, there's 56 targets in total, and we've split them up into different areas, such as where we can control, so through events, membership, technical standards. So yeah, some of the most challenging ones, I think we set more longer term. Looking at underrepresented groups within the sport, that's going to be kind of a long-term challenge, and fundamentally there's a lot of things that need to be adapted to target that area. Then we also have the kind of technical standards, such as the materials that boats are built out of, and looking at transitioning perhaps to more sustainable materials where possible. Combustion engines and the use of, so support boats, transitioning that fleet. So lots to do. It's quite a holistic project, yeah, we tried to be ambitious, but really we wanted to make sure we got the whole sailing community engaged to help shape it.
Yeah, I mean, it's you can only see just how governments are struggling to implement their own targets and goals, but at least with the sailing audience, you've got a very engaged audience who are very keen to see these sorts of things happen. So obviously we're talking about in this series about the Vendée Globe and events which like the Ocean Race, which have special event status. Do your goals apply to them automatically, or do they have some leeway in that?
Absolutely. So we have a special event sustainability charter, and initially we set that up, and there's a raft of targets within that. So looking at carbon emissions, reporting on cetacean strikes, for example, gender equality, etc. So we published it in English and French, and to start off with, it was kind of a voluntary charter, so people can sign up to it. In terms of the special events, but we're mandating it essentially going into the contracts as part of the special event agreement. So there's a mechanism there, but we did again engage with the special events, and some of them have obviously relatively large budgets to others that have more limited resources. So trying to make something that's applicable to all, but using the pinnacle of the sport to help move us in the right direction in some of these areas.
Yeah. Okay. Now, we sort of cast our mind back to the previous Volvo Ocean Race when Mark Turner sort of introduced, a sort of a gender rule into the notice of race, and that, certainly started a real momentum in offshore sailing. We've seen, more women in the Vendée Globe than in previous editions by some way, coupled with the new offshore mixed double-handed class, which has come into play. SailGP over the last few months have made some announcements about their plan to bring more women into that discipline and to increase the diversity. What more steps is World Sailing taking in this regard? I know you mentioned it's probably one of the longer-term goals, but what are you doing at the moment to really increase those elements, diversity and gender equality?
Yeah, well, I mean, we have short-term goals as well in this area. So first of all, there was some excellent work which the World Sailing Trust, so headed by Dee Kafari, also Vicky Lowe, who you may know, supported by Andrew Pindar. So that was really kind of looking at where we are today. So a global survey which across all disciplines within the sport. And through that survey, we've got a good idea of where we are. And there's lots of recommendations that have come out of that. So from a policy perspective to implementation. So for viewers that are interested, I'd highly recommend looking at that. And of course, that's going to shape some of our strategies going forward, starting, well, some of it's already started, but certainly in the next couple of years. So there's been some great strides, I think, like signing up the first Olympic sport to sign up to the UN Women Charter. So I think it's definitely front and in all of our kind of work now, that it's something that we need to address.
Now, we've been talking this week about collisions at sea, and it's it's a topic that is tough for offshore sailors, particularly with some of the sailing routes going through more sensitive areas of the world's oceans. In the Vendée Globe, 18 of the 33 teams have introduced various technologies, both watch-keeping and deterrent-based technologies, to try and avoid strikes with marine mammals. And I was chatting to Damien Foxall from 11th Hour Racing earlier in the week, and they've gone a step further and produced a marine mammal protocol for how they communicate and how they deal with and what technology they're going to put in place. And I just wondered, in that regard, going back to the sort of special event status of races like the Vendée Globe and the Ocean Race, what's World Sailing doing in this particular issue?
That's a good question. I mean, so the Vendée isn't actually a special event, as in it's not sanctioned by us. It is by the FFE. But the Ocean Race and the America's Cup, etc., are classed as special events, and within that, the charter that I mentioned earlier, there is a condition to report strikes. So I think for us, really getting more data on how much of an issue this is. I mean, clearly in the Vendée, it is an issue, and there's been other events in the past. But I think what we've seen, and a press release going out saying that you've hit a UFO doesn't necessarily correlate to exactly what it is, and sometimes clearly they don't know what they've struck. But for us to get data, working with kind of strategic partners, IWC, etc., looking at specific routing and migratory routes as well to help better inform race organisers about this issue. And it's not just cetaceans. I think with the advancement in foiling technology, with all these kind of carbon fibre appendages, even within events like America's Cup or even Sail GP, etc., you have other strikes with other marine life, so turtles in some locations, which is obviously not good for the wildlife, but also it's damaging the boats. So it's something that I think as a sport we need to get our heads around a bit more, and I can certainly see there's going to be a focus on this in the kind of the coming months.
With the new double-handed offshore sailing event, the class of boat is up for discussion at the moment, and I think that's going to be confirmed, assuming, of course, it goes ahead for the Olympics, within this sort of next 12 months or so, maybe a little further than that. But with the current boat that is used by World Sailing, I know there was some discussion about whether it should have a diesel engine or an electric engine. In the end, on grounds of safety, a decision was made that it would be diesel. Do you think, given that quite a lot of boats in the Vendée Globe are going around, with sustainable means, that as one of the objectives for the 24 games, that this class of boat should have an electric engine, assuming the safety protocols and requirements can be met?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, the boat hasn't been decided on, and also the IOC postpones their decision until May 2021. But I mean, for me personally, I'd be pushing for an electric propulsion. I mean, in reality, there's going to be a lot of other support boats due to not safety in terms of security and not venturing too far offshore. So I think there will be opportunities there. Certainly, in terms of the criteria for selecting the boat, there's going to be a number of sustainability metrics within that. So looking at life cycle assessment. So propulsion will certainly be an area that will come into that mix. And just whilst on the subject, I mean, we have a strategy for support boats, so coach boats as well, for Paris 2024 for the inshore sailing competition, working with the organisers, and some really exciting developments. We set a challenge 2024 to the marine industry, and the industry is really up to the game. So we're definitely going to be using different forms of propulsion, from certainly electric and possibly even hydrogen. So quite exciting times, I think.
So that was Dan Redding from World Sailing. If you're interested in learning more about World Sailing's Sustainability Agenda 2030, I'll put a link in the description below. Let's have a quick look at the tracker now and the weather forecast in the Vendée over the last 24 hours. So if you remember when we last caught up, we had Charlie Dallin on a PVA just dealing with this front, and the boat's all tightly packed right behind him. That system's now moved off, and all of that lead group sailing in pretty stable conditions around this high pressure system. So let's just watch what happens on the tracker as we move it forward. Okay, so as we just roll forward here, you'll see the system, the low pressure, move away. A few jibes going in there just to stay ahead of the pack, but effectively that's the position they all are now. And I have to say, from a Vendée perspective, I've never seen such a tightly knit group of boats, which makes it incredibly exciting this time round. Normally at this stage, and certainly 4 years ago, there were 2 or 3 boats, quite far out ahead of the main group. But this is super exciting. Behind, we've got Armel Trupon, who's made a nice little break and making some really good pace. Should really benefit from this sort of high pressure system to catch up with the lead group. Certainly, the 2 boats just dropped off the back of the lead group. And looking ahead to the forecast, you can see how that high pressure system is really dominating the Indian Ocean, and giving a much welcome respite probably to the fleet for certainly the next few days. We should really see the foilers starting to come into their own, although the conditions are quite downwind for them, but the flatter water, flatter seas will certainly help them to be at their full potential. So the situation right now, we've got Charlie, his lead's been whittled down by about 100 miles from Thomas Rouen, and Maitre Coq there is doing a really, really nice job. I still quite fancy Louis Burton's route down in the south, slightly better pressure down there, and I fully expect him to make some miles as well. And if we look back to the situation with Armel Tripon, who's here now, so in a really nice position to follow this dip further south, stay in the stronger pressure, away from the centre of the high pressure, and a real good opportunity to close in some miles on this group behind. So let's just run the forecast forward into the weekend. So that's Saturday. Let's just zoom out a little bit as well so you can see the full picture. Again, we look at this high pressure here, and just means that they've got this really nice stable airflow through to Cape Leuan. Let's look through to Sunday the 13th. Again, still reasonable pressure, 10 to 15 knots. Not true Southern Ocean conditions by any stretch of the imagination. And then into Monday, we'll see there. Yes, again, quite light winds for the bulk of the fleet, but at the head of the fleet there, we've just run the routing through for Charlie, and he should escape the clutches of this high, and maybe better just hook into this forming low pressure that comes off the West Australian coast. And if he does do that, he may well be able to extend out a little bit again. If you see the boats behind, that high pressure starts to sort of follow them down through. This is into Tuesday, around the bottom of Australia, and obviously butts up quite close to that ice gate limit. So it may get quite slow and painful and sloppy in the Southern Ocean in the early part of next week for a number of those boats. But let's see what happens. So that's it for today. More again on Monday. Big thanks to Dan Redding again for his interview, and see you again next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.